Launching now. All right. Have a great event, everybody.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Katie from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Clover Hope presenting her new book, The Motherlode, 100 plus women who made hip hop. She'll be talking with Rachelle Baker and Briana Younger, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Clover, Rochelle, Brianna, and the team at Abrams Image for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. In your Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you can see a count of fellow attendees on the top of your Zoom screen, so the exact location will depend on what kind of device you're using. There are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the authors and to interact with fellow attendees. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that question in the Q&A module, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program, so please make sure you're putting them there and not in the chat. We are recording tonight's event, so look for video or audio versions on our social media channels later on. And importantly, tonight's featured book, The Motherlode, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person or in our bookstore locations from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week, and you can purchase Clover's book and many others on site, or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup in the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll drop the buy link in the chat in just a moment. And we're excited to announce that we will have a limited number of copies signed by Clover, as she'll be stopping by the store to sign books in the coming days. Make sure to request a signed or personalized copy in the order comments field at checkout, and we're happy to fulfill those requests while supplies last. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. Our interviewers for tonight are Rachelle Baker and Briana Younger. Rochelle, the Motherlode's illustrator, is a multidisciplinary artist from Detroit, Michigan, with a background in relief printing, illustration, comic art, video art, and music. Brianna is a freelance music journalist and critic. Formerly an editor at the New Yorker, her work has also appeared on NPR, Billboard, EW, Pitchfork, Washington Post, The Nation, and others. They will be speaking with our featured author, Clover Hope. She is a writer and editor based in Brooklyn. Hope has written for Vibe, Billboard, XXL, GQ, Elle, Wall Street Journal Magazine, The New York Times, Wired, ESPN, The Magazine, Essence, and Village Voice, among other publications. She co-wrote Beyonce's 2020 film Black is King and is currently contributing editor for Pitchfork. Her new book, The Motherlode, highlights more than 100 female rappers, profiling each of these women, their musical and career breakthroughs, and the ways in which they helped change the culture of rap. The book has been praised by fellow writers, including Shea Serrano, Alea S. King, Elliott Wilson, and Issa Rae, who says, "This is the quintessential comprehensive book about women in the rap industry that I've been waiting for. It shines a bright light on the history of overlooked female talent and breaks down the ingenuity of our current generation of stars." Clover is going to start us off with a reading from the book, and then she'll be talking with Rochelle and Brianna and with all of you. Please take it away, Clover.
Thank you. Thank you, Issa, and the other blurbers who praised the book. And thank you guys for being here. I'm gonna start off just kind of reading from the introduction, which I titled Nice for a Girl. You know, as a phrase in hip hop, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, is like the backhanded compliment. And so I kind of wanted to start off with this, you know, start off the book with like a discussion of like what it even means to, a discussion of language basically. And so that is the introduction. I'll just kind of just basically start from the beginning. Roxanne Shanté believes she inspired the term female rapper. She swears it happened in 1985 during the New Music Seminar at New York's Marriott Marquis, site of the annual MC Battle for World Supremacy. At 15 years old, Shanté was already a battle rap legend with a hit song, 1984's Roxanne's Revenge, which made her the first ever female rap star. She was favored to win, but after making it to the final round, she lost to another acclaimed rapper, Busy Bee, in what could only be described as a heist. There was a consolation prize, Everyone told her she was nice for a girl. It was clear Shanté got robbed. Years later, one of the judges, Curtis Blow, admitted what was already an established fact in hip hop, that he scored her low on purpose. Other judges awarded her 8s, 9s, and 10s. Blow gave her a 4 because he didn't like the optics of a girl winning a rap battle, no matter how much she outperformed her opponent. Because of incidents like this, the possibility of a non-male champion in a rap battle, Shanté says the concept of the female rapper was created. I was just a great rapper, she said to Jezebel in 2016. And then they were like, well, listen, Shanté, we understand that you're a great rapper, but why don't you do this? Why don't you settle for being the best female rapper ever? She told DJ Fad in 2018, before me, there was no such title as female rapper. Everybody was just rappers and MCs. The words female rapper did appear in publications before that 1985 battle. The Boston Globe in 1980 referred to the sequence as 3 female rappers, misspelling the group's name as Sequins in print. But Shanté's origin story is still valid. That battle marked the day she realized there were different stakes for her, expectations that made it seem like she was inferior, and this naturally shaped the course of history. By then, hip hop and rap were 2 different things, a culture and a business, respectively. Male rappers were rappers, and women who did it, though talented, were different. They had breasts, which they could flaunt if they wanted, and therefore needed a separate title. They were entering a man's world, and to the mainstream press, their decision to even rap at all seemed astonishing and brave. The words female rapper often appear with the phrase male dominated somewhere nearby, alluding to women being let into an exclusively male domain, hip hop, as opposed to being a natural part of it. A growing number of women have made rapping, a male-dominated music, their own language of liberation. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported in 1985. Tired of being put down, female rappers are standing up and talking back, reads a New York Daily News story from 1991. It'd be nice if we were just considered rappers, not female rappers, but hip hop is male-dominated, rapper producer Angela Zone, known as Ange 13, said to the Chicago Tribune in 2004. Female rapper never sat well with women who thought of themselves as simply rappers who identified as women. Unfortunately, rapper who identifies as a woman would be too clunky to say, and female rapper or woman rapper, both of which are used in this book, is still a better version of the worst word in the world, femc, a combination of female and MC, which is not used in this book. Even more offensive somehow than femc is that British rapper Lady Sovereign was nicknamed Feminem, as in female Eminem, defying all reason. So that's just the introduction of the book, and I'll let Brianna take it away from here.
Hi. Well, first and foremost, congratulations, of course. To just dive right into it, the love and care that is evident in this book is just astounding. Like the level of research, the writing, just all of it. I think anyone who reads it, even if they feel like they know everything there is to know, would still learn something, many things. Where do you even begin with this kind of undertaking?
Well, the first thing I thought about was really just like how I wanted to write about the women who I was writing for. I wanted to either give new information or give new information or kind of like present old or known information in a new way. Because I was kind of looked at it as if I was writing for, hip hop heads and for casual fans of hip hop, for young people and for like the middle-aged rap fan. So I kind of challenged myself to try to like pull off that balance. And the other thing was that I didn't want to do, just kind of like Wikipedia entries on the women. Like I kind of decided really early on that I would, just do abridged bios for each person. Like here is, so-and-so was born in blah, 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 and they were, here's where they're from. I kind of decided early on to do that as like bullet points, and then to focus like each entry on, really like what is prominent about this woman, what's like a thing that if you were talking about Roxanne Shanté, what is kind of like the first thing that you would tell someone about her that like signifies why she was like notable in hip hop. And then so like for each woman, like I wanted to kind of like highlight like a way in which they shifted hip hop, whether that's like a hit song or, so like for Queen Latifah, it was kind of like, I wanted to show how she became one of the earliest rap movie stars. And, people kind of, she is among, like, next to the Will Smiths and Ice-T and Ice Cube and like that first generation of sort of like hip hop MCs who transitioned to film. And is still relevant. And she's kind of an example of just like ongoing relevancy in hip hop that's hard to achieve for women. So, basically each person I kind of was like, what is the story I'm trying to tell about them? And I took it from there. And then probably one of the first ones that I've thought about in terms of that was like Lil' Kim, because to me, she was like just the nucleus of the whole book. And it was always just kind of like how I was really interested in just like how people wrote about her and like how women who were writers like chose to write about her in the 90s. And so that was like the focus of that entry. But just as far as like the actual research part, like I just try to kind of approach any deep dive by thinking about like who will give me new information than what's already out there. And I think like with this, it was just kind of like, I needed to talk to the artists to get that information. Like a lot of it wasn't online. It wasn't kind of like, you can look up something. Like I could, if I couldn't look it up, I was kind of like, all right, I just have to like create it. So, that was kind of the thinking. I just wanted to kind of reach out to people, to artists and women who hadn't been on people's radars, like since the 90s, or kind of people I grew up on. In terms of process or like nerdy, if people are interested, like I did a spreadsheet, made a list of people I wanted to reach out to, and kind of, like went from there, just kind of like going through the names. And then I definitely realized I had to speak to not just the women, but like, the producers and the music video directors, the stylists, who all were part of kind of creating, this kind of the presentation, the like images that we got. So yeah, it was hard I was all over the place. Like
I mean, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
thorough.
Thank
MC
you.
Sharrock's quote about like hedging the first with like one of the first, or is credited as, really stuck out to me, and it comes early on, and you admit that you do some hedging in the book. Like, did hearing her say that change anything for you and how you decided when to be definitive and when to like hedge a little bit?
Sort of, like, from the beginning, like I knew I had to kind of define the language, around, like, starting with that opening essay on female rappers. Like I kind of needed to kind of like, it was important to kind of like talk about language, because that's what defines history. And like people are the ones who determine language, and then the people also then determine like what is considered worthy of being, remembered in history. And so that was the question I knew, like from the beginning, I needed to be like, it's kind of like talk about how people see the term female rapper in the first place, and then like kind of transition from that to talking about like who was even, like how we even think of like who was first. Because I didn't speak to MC Sharrock till like really the end of the process of the book. Like I had spoken to Debbie D and Pebbly Pooh first. And so for people who kind of maybe haven't looked through it, the first entry in the book is the first women, and it's basically kind of talking about the debate or sort of conversation that's been happening that over years between some of the women who feel like they're, they were the first prominent, female MC, and that they should, lay claim to that title. And, that was sort of a story that I like kind of saw playing out the more I spoke to, like the more people I spoke to. And Debbie D and Pebbly Pooh, like they were like some of the first people that I talked to. And so I had kind of already been thinking about like, how do I don't want to be the one to kind of like say like, oh yes, this person was first, because I wasn't there. And so I kind of just like saw it as me being the conduit for their story, for them to kind of like decide and like plead their case basically to the reader, like, so you guys can kind of, read it and kind of get their story. And then like in the piece, I kind of was really at, I mean, MC Shawrock does a good job of just saying that it's important to why she feels like it's important for writers to be definitive. And I kind of just wanted her to be the one to say it, like, because the whole idea is that women don't get, like, they didn't feel like there was they had a definitive place in hip hop history. And so by having this first title, they could just have this title that could help people remember them. The same way that like Aretha Franklin is like the Queen of Soul, and like, Elvis, allegedly King of Rock. And like, like these are titles that in a way can't be taken away. And they want something that can't be taken away from them in the way that maybe they felt like something was stripped, like their story was like stripped away from them. And so, so I thought about it in that sense. And then like when I spoke to her toward the end, I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just kind of like keep this, I'm not gonna decide like who was first, because that was kind of, I think it was one of the edits, like from an editor was like, do you want to say who was first? Or like, do you kind of wanna, like you should maybe like kind of have this conversation. If you don't want to say it, like kind of maybe talk that through. And so that was a great idea to kind of just like basically say like, yeah, it's not coming from me. So I had to because like, like they're the primary sources, even if their stories may be like conflicting in some way, like they should be the ones, it should be coming from them. So
history is messy. Like it's
yeah.
not straightforward kind of thing. And I think we get the benefit of reading it in sequence, but obviously you didn't necessarily write it in the order that we read it in.
No.
But like getting like, the clarity of like a timeline, like you've been writing about these women and rap as a whole, like for years and years and years, like, did you have to unlearn anything as you were writing this?
Yeah, like I mean, there was a lot I had to kind of unlearn about who, like kind of basically just like the timeline of hip hop. And because like from my teenage timeline, which, like I kind of got into hip hop like what, 13, 14. So like I kind of realized more and more that like people's timelines start at a different place. And like for me, it was maybe like Salt and Pepper and Queen Latifah, like Lil Kim, like that was, like early 90s sort of, and like some late 80s, but that was more so me like going back to learn. So, and then, but like today's timeline might start at like Nicki Minaj. And like the generation before them might start at like maybe, I don't know, Queen Latifah, or, I get into some of that like in the first essay. So that was something I kind of, I think just realized that there isn't like a linear narrative necessarily for hip hop. It's like, these dimensions. And if I could kind of like not create, but kind of just show like this alternate timeline that was happening at the same time as the main narrative of hip hop that most people know, which is like Kool Herc, DJing up until like now. That if I could kind of present like like just present like, hey, here are a few like alternate timelines. Shout out to Avengers. Like I could kind of like create a more filled in story of hip hop. And so that was something I kind of, just kind of the idea of something of history even being linear was like something I had to kind of like just kind of think about. Because you really do kind of, you kind of do get into like your own internal time, sense of time. And like, that's not necessarily, there's so much like outside of that, basically. Even from like regions, like I was so like East Coast centric, and like there were artists I didn't know about, like Conscious Daughters, like growing up. And so, in that way, it was like a learning process, and then unlearning like some of my like East Coast bias of like who was popular,
Shout out the South.
And the South, yeah.
The images in this book are such a beautiful and essential part. Like, you could have chosen to, you know, keep their names alive, but it feels very intentional, the decision to keep their likenesses alive and preserve like what they looked like, what kind of their style was. Like, how did the collaboration between you and Rochelle come to be, and how did like the y'all's partnership evolve to like bring both of those things together?
Rochelle, do you want to discuss? Yeah. Yeah. And just to like start it off, yeah, I kind of like just found, thankfully, Rochelle, like I was definitely, you know, like specifically looking for like a Black woman to illustrate Black women, like mostly Black women. And so, you know, I just like really loved her aesthetic, and like she was like, there was like one image in particular that the cover is like based off of, that she had done, and it was just kind of like cool, and like it had flavor, and it was like clean but like loud and textured. And so yeah, she can kind of like talk about that, but I wanted, yeah, I think like we both wanted to kind of like just have like classic images of these women. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Clover. Yeah, I guess so. Going into it, I just usually when I start a project, I just do a lot of research on like for images, and it the cool thing was that a lot of the figures in the book have such amazing style, which made it really hard to narrow everything down and figure out like exactly what time we wanted to like show them in, or what era. Like a lot of the artists have like different eras, especially Lil Kim. So it was just really fun to be able to like go through all of those, and then I just kind of like did a ton of drawing, and we went over everything, and yeah.
Yeah, we went like, there were certain people like, you know, Kim's, I think, Nikki's, right? Those are like more than one image of them for that reason.
It's so tough because there's so many iconic looks. And it's really hard to pin them down. And with those two especially, we got to kind of like put multiple images of them, because there's not just one way, there's not just one look that you think of when you think of Lil Kim. It's like you think of like a color or a pattern, or when she had blonde hair, or you know, a million images come to mind when I think about her. But yeah.
And I wonder what you think of like, because as I was like flipping through it, because like we didn't get to flip through it because of like printing stuff, like until, you know, so like I just realized, you know, like so many of, it's like a just series of like, you know, portraits, sitting portraits, where it's like, you know, if you're at a gallery and you like someone like a president who's like sitting to get their image, to get their photo kind of like illustrated or painted. So like I wonder like what effect just like flipping through it and seeing your illustrations just kind of, you know, how did you feel? How did you feel? Just kind of seeing, you know, it all back to back, you know, like seeing like the as a whole.
It was really exciting. I got the box of books in the middle of moving, and a friend took our mail inside, and I got to my like old house to pick stuff up, and there was just a box waiting for me. I opened it up and I'm like about to cry. It looks so great, and I hadn't had a chance to really see like everything in advance because we couldn't get printed copies. So like seeing the patterns layered and seeing everything in real life as opposed to like on my iPad was so exciting. It came together so well, and it's really weird when you think about a book like in your mind what it's going to look like when you only kind of have like what the work that you've done on it in your mind, but not really like an object. It's really hard to kind of like see in your brain, and then when it's real, it just it makes sense, but it also makes no sense because like it's like a ton of stuff. But yeah. it was, I don't know, it's a very dreamy book, and I'm really excited that
Yeah,
it's real.
so pretty. Yeah, I think that, yeah, I was just excited to kind of have this uh collect, like just like a collection of like really dope imagery.
Amazing. So we've mentioned Lil Kim several times now. And I think it's interesting how when you're flipping through the book, how kind of late she arrives. Like she's kind of in the last third, 2/3 ish. Um, so we talk about, you know, what we were saying earlier with like how where people's timelines of women in rap and hip hop as a whole like begin. And I think Kim is like the one definitive like cultural reset where there's like the world before Kim and then there's the world after Kim. But I think being able to see how many women came before her, and you can see those women in her, like Wanda D and that sexy glam she had going on back in like 1984. And like it's just really powerful for understanding kind of like the dialogue between women in rap across time and like understanding like individual evolution as well as collective evolution. Like, can you speak a bit on that?
Right. Yeah, it was just, yeah, it's funny how she's like, yeah, dead in the center of the book, basically. And like it, like I said, like for me, that was in terms of like the, you know, like she was just so early in my formative years. So I don't know. I think it was like just important to kind of like see, it's important to kind of like see the precedents that, you know, are partly responsible for like what's happening today. Um, and some of it, and this is like outside of rap, but what we're seeing with like Chloe Bailey being sort of kind of like critiqued, you know, for like showing off her body on Instagram. I don't know if like showing off is the right word, just like posting a video.
Existing.
Like, yeah, and people kind of, I guess, you know, use whatever phrasing they feel like. She's kind of just like making great points about like, you know, the shame that, you know, like Black girls and women have felt in just showing their bodies, and like how long it took for her to even feel good or embrace kind of like how she looks, and like, you know, so I think, you know, part of that, part of like, you know, making sure that you see, you know, the people before Little Kim is like to kind of understand like what's happening, like why this conversation is still happening about like how like Black girls are like owning their sexuality, or like kind of being the owning their like images even. So at least for, you know, like I wanted to, you know, have it in that kind of like chronological order to show like all these basically like show all the precedents. You
And
know,
even
there was like, yeah,
oh sorry, no, I was just gonna say like the Mia X first
yeah,
person
yeah,
where she talks
yeah,
about, you
like
know, not even just fashion but like her actual figure, like her actual body, and people wanting to change it. um
right, like her kind of she's like, yeah, I wanted to just sort like embrace being like curvy, and like she kept getting people subtly dropping hints that's like, oh, you know, maybe you should try this diet, or maybe you should try this, you know, what, like late 90s, early 2000s. And you know, so like I'm sure that I would be surprised if that wasn't still happening. But I think like, you know, it's like we have to see kind of like how it both has evolved and like hasn't, because those same issues are, you know, like people, women are still having kind of like that same issue. And so the like Wanda D, yeah, who was like a DJ who like transitioned to like doing more like artists, basically rapping and singing. And like Choice, who I didn't know of, was like signed to Rap a Lot Records, and she was out of Houston and had this, you know, like I think it was 1990, yeah, like her album, the Big Payback. Yeah, I think it's kind of just you know, important to see like where how much like kind of hasn't, so how much these topics have kind of like stagnated a little bit, you know.
and
Um Yeah.
Another kind of similar thread of like the more things change, the more they stay the same is like that question of like subversion versus exploitation, which you see it over and over and over again in this book. Like, and not even just sexually, like, you know, Salt and Pepper being under the guide of a man who's like writing about like these feminist topics, but he's very much a man. Or the on its face provocativeness of like bitches with problems and like who was kind of benefiting from that. Do you kind of have a clear sense of how and where those lines exist or don't exist, or are they kind of blurrier than ever? Like how much is duality rather than false dichotomies? Like how is that kind of coming to play in your head now?
This is something I want to see like a whole panel on this from other women voices to kind of like, you know, speak on it. Like I do think one, I guess like notable point to make is like how just like the autonomy has shifted over the years where like you said, you had like Herbie writing a good bulk of like Salt and Pepper's songs, or Biggie even just simply like deciding to choose that squat image for Kim and using that as like the promotional poster. Well, you know, like he decided like I want the picture of you squatting. And I think that's where, you know, I guess I hesitate to make it seem as if that's not like some version of that isn't still happening, because you know there's still like men still kind of like in terms of like powerful positions still have executive leadership, and they're still kind of like, you know, they run labels, and you know there's still, I think we saw a lot of that trying to shift maybe last year, but it's still you know, they still kind of are the gatekeepers. So but what I think is, and what is, you know, what's obviously kind of different is just, you know, like I think like gradually things have shifted to where like a woman artist who, you know, like a rapper, like she can kind of like take a picture and like just put it out. And I know that's like that seems, that's like very simple, but like very revolutionary for women to kind of just be able to you know, not have to have a filter in, well, like person filter in between like the taking of the image and like the showing it to people. And like if you you know, like there's power in just like being able to post an image of yourself online and like to like thousands of people, and you know, whether people like it or not, like there's, you know, I think that this generation is like taking advantage of that, like that power to kind of just like, you know, set what they want their sound, message, image, material to kind of like be. And obviously everyone has like input from other people. It's, you know, not like one person, but you know, we can actually see the difference from like you know, Cardi, with like, you know, I guess maybe from Nicki on, like Nicki and Cardi kind of just being like, you know, the authors, I guess, of their own, of their presentations, or the authors of their own image, or whatever, if that makes sense. You know, like, but I want to know what you think kind of for this one also.
I mean, I think it's so weird, especially like as critics, like it's hard to toe that line of like accountability and holding
Mm-hmm.
like someone in love and appreciation and respect and honoring what they go through and have to go through to exist in the world as like Black women or whatever the case may be. And I guess it's kind of, in some ways it feels not up to us. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you you're being exploited, or I can't tell you, you know, you're being whatever taken advantage of if you yourself feel like you have agency and autonomy. And I think it's just this weird position we're in as outsiders where
Mm-hmm.
we're not the rappers, it's not our image, it's not our thing. But I don't know, it's
Yeah.
a weird double-edged sword.
Yeah, and that's like what we kind of have to constantly have, just like as women have to like think about basically. It's like, it's like you want to see the sexy images and you kind of like you just have this kind of running conversation in your mind.
Like, it's this weird, like you see like a fly image of like Cardi B, but then you go out in the real world and then you meet some dude who's like, oh, you should look like Cardi B. Like, no, I shouldn't. That image was fire. But also like it's just this weird, I don't know. It's hard to say the least.
Men's still setting expectations basically. So yeah. Maybe this is something that can trickle into like a panel conversation. So I think that will be really interesting, just to kind of talk about like how I really want to just like hear more from, like I want like a round table with the new women rappers like Sweetie and Megan and Cardi, and just like them talking about all this. Maybe one day.
So the voice is another through line in the book. Like, you especially go in depth on the importance of like unique voice when you talk about MC Lyte. But just listening to like the companion playlist, like there's just so many amazing voices in rap that have come from women. I personally appreciate like the Bali Babies and like the Flo Millies putting on for us little voice people. I ain't got no bass. But like, how in your findings have women been both kind of advantaged and disadvantaged by the sound of their voice?
Yeah, I remember that being a thing with like Young M.A, right? Because like it being, there's always this, masculine, feminine, like masculinity, or like it's sort of like if you like early on, I think like a whole thing with Foxy was like she was like, oh, she sounds like a dude rapping or whatever. And it's like, it might not even, I guess part of it is sometimes like the women are kind of like changing their voices to kind of be like kind of fit into what is the dominant sound or whatever. And part of it is, what just sounds cool. So, like this was a whole thing with like the Lil' Kim, like in that piece where like Lance like on Rivera, who was one of the label heads, like, basically played a role in shaping her how she was presented to the world. And Biggie and like wanted her to sound like less what they call like masculine and more, they wanted her to kind of like, just kind of lighten her voice to sell to like appeal to men. And so that's definitely something that, women have to think about more. It's kind of like sounding like pretty or like sounding like, like as if, I guess, like sounding more like a dude is more like credibility. Yeah, like more authoritative. Like it's like, oh, you can rap because because like you kind of have a different voice register. I don't know, it's like an interesting kind of thing. I don't know if it's that much like a issue, maybe. I don't know if it's as much an issue now. Like we have so many different women voices and like tones and kind of like sounds. This is something I also talked about like in the Nicki Minaj entry, where part of her appeal was that she could kind of go in and out of these different tones and voices, and like she didn't have one sound where you could be like, oh, she sounds like masculine or feminine. Like she kind of went in and out of these different things, and I think that definitely that like shape shifting probably helped her kind of have that, get out of like whatever box people wanted to put on her, like as basically just like as a woman rapping. So yeah, I don't know if it's kind of like still an ongoing kind of
it does feel like just one more thing women have to think about, that like women entering into rap just have to think about literally everything. How do you look? How do you sound?
Right.
So a final question before we open up the floor for Q&A. So if people have questions, put them in the Q&A box. That's down there, over there, wherever it might be. So the last full essay in the book is on, of course, Cardi B. Like you literally mentioned WAP, which is wild since you were basically writing this up until last week. It's like WAP just happened. Like it made history. Like history is still being made when it comes to women in rap. And I think everyone agrees that there's something in the water right now. It's like something very unique and special about this moment and women kind of flourishing in their own ways. So you got the history, you went to the beginning and you came all the way up through right now. What is different? And what is fueling like this change, or what feels like a change with regards to both access, attitude, and do you think it's sustainable?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I really just think the internet is such a big deal. I know that sounds like so basic, but like it is, just like I said, like having access to, like not having to go to like an I don't know, like an A&R or like a label person, like if you don't want to put out an image of yourself, and it like is really kind of a big difference in people, like more women just being noticed and more of them getting out, and them also kind of having more just more kind of like, I guess access is just the right word. Another thing is just like there's a lot of funny female rappers. And like that's one thing I really wanted to talk about, like through Cardi B, like the humor is really important in rap. And I don't like, you kind of obviously like there've been women throughout the years who've been able to kind of like showcase in songs, like, or in videos, just like being comical, like Missy, Elliott. But social media does, and like, Vine, RIP, and TikTok and Instagram does allow like a new way for women to just show that they're funny. And if you can just make people laugh, you can grow an audience. So I think that's like Sweetie is doing, like she puts effort into making these videos that are, memes, and like they're funny, and there is her like, cosplaying and like performing. And so that naturally kind of creates interest, and they can do that on their own. Like that's just like do it yourself. And I think that does make a big difference, that people can just like, I can go to Sweetie's page or Cardi's page. I know I'm gonna like see a video and probably laugh and feel good. So like that's really simple but important to like just getting more people out there. And then yeah, I think there's just like just more access points than like previously, just like mixtapes, TV, radio. Some I guess would say there's like so many access points, but and it's like hard to actually keep up with like all the different kind of ways that you can discover an artist, like SoundCloud and like TikTok and like Spotify, all these different kind of like avenues. But does end up being beneficial for like women, because it's kind of like just numbers game, is percentage, at least I would think. It's like you just have more opportunities, so you have more lanes to like kind of jump into. So naturally that would maybe kind of multiply the wealth, basically.
And there seems to be like a collective, like a shaming that happens if you slight women, at least on Twitter. I don't know how much it translates like into the real world, but like if you make a list and like of the 10 best rappers and there's no women on it, like
it's like how
the 10 best rappers of 2020, like you're an embarrassment. Like
yeah
like, and I that feels different. Like then
yeah
we spent a long time with people making lists, and it was just kind of like, yeah, that's the list, and like seems right to me. And now people are like, yeah, no.
That's really good. Yeah like you can't not have like Cardi on your like hottest list right now because you look crazy. Like you can't have a woman, you can't not have like more than one woman. Whereas, yeah, like years ago, it was like, well, let's see which two can be on the like hottest MCs list. Yeah.
So taking Mary's question, I'm sorry in advance if I butcher anyone's names. Mary would like to know whose story surprised you the most and why?
I don't know if surprised, but like I was like when I spoke to Charli Baltimore, who was basically mid 90s, sort of well, late 90s, sorry, like mid late 90s. Like in between like the Kim Foxy kind of era. And she was, you know, like kind of I guess like famously or infamously like Biggie's girlfriend. And you know, she's kind of told her story before, but she really wanted to just talk about like writing, and that was interesting to me, like how she just wanted to be like recognized, or kind of just she wanted people to understand that you know there's this whole thing of like women not writing their own raps, and like every guy she would speak to in the industry would be like, oh, they were like, oh, obviously you don't write, so but we need Cameron to write for you, or like let's get like she Luch to like write this for you, because the natural assumption was like you're not going to write this. And so just her like that being kind of, you know, it was like both surprising and then like I guess shameful for me that I didn't kind of think about that as like something you know, like she would kind of care about. And so that was like surprising. And then her, you know, saying that, you know, Biggie kind of would basically make her practice, not make her, would ask her to kind of like practice writing every day. And would be like, call her every day and be like, are you writing? Are you writing? And just kind of her attention to like writing. And it wasn't something that like, I think it was something, you know, like when we were talking, she just like, she brought up and she wanted to kind of like make just kind of like talk at length about, and it was interesting. And so when I talked to her, I was like, yeah, her entry is going to be about just like writing, because everyone kind of knows her, not everyone, but like most hip-hop people, like hip-hop heads know sort of like her general story, you know. And I wanted to just kind of go outside of that a little bit.
Awesome. For, I guess, the both of you, Rochelle and Clover, Sarah would like to know, will you please sell prints or the illustrations so we can put them on the walls?
Yeah, I want some.
Second that.
I had like printed, or I ripped out one of the pages from like a early when we were like we were able to like be outside, like print of the book, and I like framed it, the Foxy Brown image, but I need to get like a professional version. But yeah, can we get
I mean, I don't know if I can. I don't
yeah,
anything about that. I don't know if I'm allowed to print them, but I did print one attested since we didn't get any like test copies. I did print one out on my printer, and it was the Foxy Brown one, and my mom came over and flipped out. But yeah. Oh, I think
Samantha,
maybe,
or my book editor, is saying
it says
you can sell them,
sell
but
them.
not
Wow, okay.
like, but like merch is different,
There we
right?
go. Soon to come.
Is print different from like merch? Like, can we, like, I want a t-shirt. Can we?
Yeah, can a t-shirt?
Sorry,
Maybe I'll just make us personal t-shirts in some way.
Yeah, maybe we can do a giveaway. We can do a giveaway. Okay, yeah, we'll figure that out. Cool. Yeah, like
Amazing.
a merch giveaway or something.
Please take all of our coins.
Face mask is a good idea.
Clover, Hunter would like to know, which writers are your biggest influences when it comes to writing about women and music?
A good question. Yeah, there's like in the like acknowledgements, section, or I think it's in there. I just kind of was am like I don't like for me, like women, you know, not to say there are plenty of male writers that I enjoy, but like women tell the like best rap stories. Oh, I see Wanda D is in there. And you know, I would say like Dream Hampton and like Joan Morgan and Danielle Smith, definitely, who I spoke to for the book. And like the Lola Ogunaki used to write for Vibe a lot. Like Aaliyah S. King. I just kind of like suggest going back to, you know, old issues of Vibe and kind of like making sure that you kind of like read up on this. Like read up on kind of like the women who like, you know, who wrote about hip hop like in the 90s and 2000s. And, you know, like, cause the hard thing is that these resources are, you know, like in terms of like, they're like not super digital, but you know, that's so I had to kind of like buy old issues. But and there are like one I do want to say like one of the books that I bought was Hip Hop Divas, which Vibe like basically put out, and it was, you know, like a compilation of profiles of like different women like in hip hop, and that was like really crucial to kind of like some research. So I recommend like getting that if it's available. And yes, I do want to make sure I give a shout out to Wanda D, who's in the book and in this, who I think that's you. Can you verify? Who's like, you know, she like I don't know if you were in here for the part when we talked about I'm talking to Wanda. Okay, guys, like, you know, sexuality and like kind of how you were like one of the earlier kind of examples of like a female rapper who DJ, rapper, singer who owned and expressed sexuality, you know, through records and just through movement, I would say. So I think it's important to kind of like to see that lineage. And as you can see in this all caps message, like that, you know, is important, like the women wanted to like be known also. So yes.
Astrid is asking, where do you think women in underground and conscious rap and hip hop fit into the archive and history? With so much streaming, social media, and other platforms, do you think there is less danger of these women being overlooked or disappearing than the women highlighted early on in your book? And can I just say, one of my favorite quotes of yours is when you say that conscious rap is men dealing with their Blackness and not dealing with their gender. And
yeah, I know. Sorry, I have to LOL this. Yeah, I think like, and again, conscious rap is like a label men come up with, men hip hop come up with. But like, yeah, there's a section in like Salt and Pepper where I talk about how like their raps about like women and feminism, you know, could kind of be considered, you know, that's like conscious rap. They're talking about identity and they're talking about like their Blackness and their femaleness. And so I think there's always probably gonna be like you know, the women who kind of fall between the cracks, because there is still, I was talking to like Elizabeth Mendez Berry is another like woman writer who like is amazing, and like a hip hop writer who's like, you know, she's still writing and was like did a bunch of like classic 90s kind of articles and 2000s, and you know, she just made a great point about there's still like a certain image that you have to, in a sense, kind of portray. It's, you know, in terms of mainstream and like overall kind of success, there's so few women who are popular and don't have a like certain look and like, you know, shape and like expression, physical expression. So that is something that still kind of needs to be considered and kind of thought about in hip hop. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I do think there's at least more avenues for like different types of expression that can be like, maybe it's not like on a large scale, but it's like, you know, they have their certain fan bases. And like, I don't like making things seem like, oh, everything is better now, women are like popping and yay. Because there's, as we see with like Megan Thee Stallion, and like her kind of like the reactions to like her shooting, and you know, just hip hop still being hip hop as an entity still being, you know, reactive in a really like negative way to that. Like there's still things that are like backwards, and so I think, you know, that's part of it also, like the underground sort of you know, women who are kind of like aren't doing what Cardi and Sweetie are rapping in that way. You know, there's still like a harder road, or like to kind of take to be mainstream, you know, at least to be. But
JR would like to know, in terms of people you highlighted, where was your cutoff in terms of time period, and how current did you get?
Cardi B is the last like long profile, and then I have shout outs written by some of my favorite writers. Writing today for people like Sweetie and Doja Cat and Lizzo. So the cutoff, because I was like, if I was still writing this book this year, they would have longer entries. But like Cardi B was like, all right, this is the kind of end of this like chapter, or maybe it's like a volume, and then the next volume is like post Cardi B kind of. So that was like the cutoff.
Rochelle, for you, Amy would like to know, how did you get started in illustrating, and what would be your dream job?
I got started illustrating non-professionally, just drawing like fan comics and drawing fan art when I was in middle school and high school, like drawing my favorite like anime characters and comic book characters and stuff. Professionally, in 2018 roundabout, I guess. And I like, my dream job actually was probably this book. Just getting to draw like such a cool like book with such inspiring and like really badass women that I love and appreciate and look up to. But I guess working on like a graphic novel, a comic book, or something like that's kind of like what I'm looking forward to and like working towards. So that's, yeah, those two would be my dream jobs, or yeah, dream illustration jobs.
Yeah. I would love that.
Clover, Motoko is looking for whether or not there's a playlist featuring these artists.
Oh, yes. I tweeted it. I will tweet it again after this. But yeah, there's like a reading playlist. Basically, like most of the songs like that I mentioned and recommend in the book, plus more. So I'll tweet it out.
Trying to hurry and get through as many as we can. Hunter is asking, was there a particularly challenging essay to write? Was there a challenging one, and was there a favorite?
I think a favorite was Kaya, just because I love that song, My Neck, My Back, and it was just like it was like a short, really snappy, kind of like silly sort of entry that I liked kind of having as a balance in the book, because I did want it to be a fun read. Because I think sometimes, like I said, people forget that like women are funny and like women rappers can be funny, and like a lot of these, like I wanted it to like reflect that basically. So that was like a favorite to write. And then Difficult was probably the first one. Like I rewrote it so many times. The first couple, like Mercedes Ladies and that first piece, because there's less information out. So it's, you know, basically using the information that I'm getting from the interviews, that some of which isn't like confirmed or corroborated. And then like, you know, basically it's like, you know, starting from scratch versus having kind of like resources to, you know, confirm things. So that's where like some of the hedging came in. And it's like, well, because you know, it's some of it is like hearsay. So those were the beginning was like the hardest to write, because I was like, how do I just like start this off? Like that was definitely the hardest. Oh, thank you. Yeah, because someone dropped the playlist link in.
And
Yeah,
two
there it
final
is.
quick ones.
Mhm.
Was there any specific motivation for the name of the book? Samantha would like to know.
Yeah, my sister.
Hi, sister.
Yeah, there was a point where I was really like struggling to come up with a title, and I was listening to Yo-Yo a lot, and like her album like Make Way for the Motherlode was like just kind of, well, one, it wasn't, you know, really like a seminal, like just simply rap album, and not just like female rap, and but something that like again, like my East Coast bias, like I didn't play it as much like when I was younger, so I wanted to kind of sort of nod to like this idea of discovery. And the Motherlode in general, like I looked it up. Well, I'm gonna look it up as on this. I looked up the definition, and it felt like I felt like it really like fit. One of the definitions just like felt like it really fit the book, and it was I'm gonna find it, a principal source or supply, uh, the principal vein or load of a region, a principal source or supply. I just kind of like was like wanted to have a title that basically was like these women are like essential to hip hop. Like they are like supplying us with like resources, and like, you know, and it's not just contributions, like you know, that word is being used a lot, whatever, but it's more than contributions. It's like actually like they like created hip hop, and so they didn't just like contribute, they like created this stuff that you're listening to. So like I wanted to basically just say that in a word, and Motherlode just seemed like it you know, covered that, and then also pointed to like the volume of women. It was like, we hit the Motherlode. It's like this is like a lot of women that I'm going to be writing about. You know, yes. It ended up like really working out. When I was like, oh, this is it. I didn't even think, I was like, this is it.
And finally, last but not least, Renee would like to know in the table of contents, what's the difference between those in dark purple, lavender, and red?
I don't know. That's like a design question for Diane, who's like amazing. I don't know. I think the red is just like the sidebar pages. Yeah. And then
Diane is on here. Oh, there.
Yeah, are you here? Okay, yes. So it's for the smaller entries. Got it. So it just like distinguishes like the format of the pages, but great like design question. I love nerdy questions.
Cool. So we made it to the end. I feel like we could go on forever and ever.
Yeah.
We need spin-off panels, as you said.
Yeah. I want to like continue. Hopefully, like it just kind of like bridges the gap and continues the conversation that's already happening about like how this younger generation is, you know, all the names that you kind of just naturally listen to, maybe just kind of think about like how they got here, you know, like that's what I want to happen. So thank you, Brianna, thank you, Rochelle, like endlessly. You're amazing. And thank you guys for coming out. Thank you guys for like clicking a link. And joining us.
Thank you all, Clover, Rochelle, Brianna. Thank you for that fantastic discussion. And thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. If you missed any of tonight's discussion, or if you just want to watch it again, we will be posting the recording to our YouTube channel, so please look out for it there. And don't forget to buy your copy of The Motherlode in-store or online at greenlightbookstore.com, and to request a signed copy in the comment section if you want it signed. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.